Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And we're here again with criminal defense attorney extraordinaire Tim Forshey of Forshey Law, who you should be getting your NFA trusts and your Arizona CCW from. Also going to for any criminal matter, even family law stuff. We recently had one on the channel that's probably one of the saddest and most harrowing videos that we've ever had. One of the hardest to watch out of Maryland. And as multiple police officers stand around outside and listen, to the screams and plaintive pleas,
the plaintive wails
of a woman being murdered by her husband while they sit outside. And yes, there was gunfire going on. Okay, Mike and I were moderately hard on those guys, and I think we should have been. And I want to talk to Tim about, is this a place where these officers should be denied qualified immunity for being so egregiously negligent in their duties?
Firearms Legal Protection is who I trust to help me after a use of force incident. If you're a Firearms Legal Protection member, I will also be on your team as a consulting expert, and you can attend our monthly active self-protection training seminars for free. Check out all they offer to their members at the link below.
So first of all, once again, I know we always end up with an argument in the comments section about qualified immunity because, number one, people don't understand it. They think that cops don't get charged with crimes because of qualified immunity, when qualified immunity has nothing to do.
It's only civil liability.
Yeah, civil liability has nothing to do with criminal charges, right? So they are not immune from prosecution under criminal law in any capacity.
And can I just kind of take
Sure,
that for a second? So
roll.
one thing a lot of people, just to distinguish between the two, there's a much higher standard involved, at least there's supposed to be, with criminally prosecuting somebody than there is with suing somebody because of the burden of proof. You're considered innocent until you're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. What is beyond a reasonable doubt? It's amazing how many people in my class I'll say, how sure would you have to be of my client's guilt to send him to prison for 30 years? And the answer I get is, I have to be 100% sure. Which I love hearing. You know, if I'm getting to do voir dire or the jury pool, that's fantastic.
Yes.
Of course, the minute they say that, my opponent strikes them. But be that as it may, well, back when we used to have voir dire, we no longer have peremptory challenges or voir dire in Arizona.
That's terrible.
We're on a 13-month-long little test thing that I hope goes to hell. It's horrible. But anyway, the point is that the standard there is we know it's not 100% sure. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's something less than 100. We know it's greater than 51% sure because that's called preponderance of the evidence, and that's the standard in a civil case. And this is basically the long-winded explanation of why O.J. was found not guilty but liable, because the standard of care is different in a civil case. So in theory, if the state is sure that this cop has committed a crime and that there's a likelihood of conviction, that means that we believe beyond a reasonable doubt they did something wrong. And that's important that we distinguish that because now they are going to be held to task, right? But the bar is lower in a civil case, and that's why qualified immunity is dealing with that.
And in a civil case, they can apportion guilt.
Absolutely, and they always do.
And they do, right? They say, well, we think you were 70% at fault and you were 30% at fault. And so you sued for $1 bajillion and we're going to give you 70% of that.
It's literally called comparative fault, which we have in Arizona, we have what's called pure comparative fault. So yes.
So that's part of that. So qualified immunity is this idea that says that when officers are acting on behalf of the state, that the state assumes their liability, their civil liability.
Correct.
But the immunity is not total. It's qualified in that it only holds if they're acting in accordance with their training and their commission.
Or if they're violating a right that is a known right or that should have been known.
Right.
Right. So yeah. Which is the right to safety, the right to life, the right to freedom.
Right.
You know, those are pretty clear. Yeah.
And so when they violate that right knowingly, then they're responsible for their actions. If they do so unknowingly, or if they are acting within the auspices of their role, then the state assumes the liability if that was wrong.
We call that within the course and scope of their authority as that employee. Yeah, so.
Now there are other folks who have total immunity. Diplomats from other countries. This is, you see that, the old lethal weapon thing, right? Oh, I have diplomatic immunity, right? And then he shoots him in the face anyways.
Exactly.
That's not right. Remember, it's Hollywood.
If it's in the cargo hold of a tanker that's out in the ocean, you're probably,
Prove it.
Let it slide, yeah.
Anyway, and judges in their action as judges have complete immunity. There's no qualifications to their immunity. You can't sue them personally for what they did. Full stop.
You can sue anybody with a roll of toilet paper and a red crayon, but it'll be dismissed immediately.
Yeah, it'll be dismissed immediately.
Right.
But in this case, these cops, go watch the video, guys.
It's hard to watch.
It was egregious.
Yep.
The shots ring out, and I get it. The first officer at very first, when he comes to the door, he hears her screaming for help. I mean, there's exigency right there.
Right.
And you were just hoping. So the door opens, we hear a shot break, you hear her screaming for help, and I'm just hoping, officer, be the hunter, not the rabbit. Run in there and turn that towards you and burn that guy down. And he doesn't. He goes and hides behind a car. Second guy shows up and hides behind his car. Third guy, I mean, I'm going to watch my words here.
Yeah.
But he fumble farts with his AR-15.
That was hard to watch. I mean, John and I are both firearms instructors, and watching the just abysmal level of incompetence with that AR-15. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, he reloaded his handgun before he fired another shot. He reloaded it twice in the heat of the moment. But when he absolutely had no idea how to manipulate that AR-15, I was just like, what? And so we're issuing AR-15s to people that absolutely have no idea how to use them? I mean, that is
and under stress, set up wrong, not correct, and they all stood around while she was murdered. And
yeah, maybe when I watch this, it's hard not to think about what happened in Uvalde, Texas, or at Parkland in Florida.
Yeah,
it's just
Stoneman Douglas High School.
I mean, if you're the kind of person that's going to stand there and watch this, then I'm not really sure why you've got a shield on your chest. I don't get that.
And to me, I look at these and I go, okay, wait a minute. That is not how we trained you.
Right.
That is not, if you're going to accept the role as a public servant, right? So I don't believe in sworn versus civilian.
Right.
Right? So to me, the distinction for a civilian is with the military. But within the non-military population, we have private citizens and public servants.
Right.
Okay? I'm a private citizen. I don't want to be a public servant, right? I don't want to accept that responsibility. More than that, my wife don't want me to accept that responsibility. I thought about going through Phoenix's reserve officer program back in the day, but my wife couldn't handle living with a guy that went off and did cop stuff.
And thankfully, everybody was honest about that. Because
Yeah,
you'd be
we were
surprised
all
how many
honest about
wives don't voice that, and it turns into a nasty divorce and bad things.
Yeah. So I'm a private citizen, but if I accept the role of public servant, I accept that involves danger.
Yep.
I accept that I'm going to take training that will lead me to go run into gunfights instead of run away from them.
That's right.
Whereas as a private citizen, if I hear my neighbor getting murdered by her husband, I have no obligation to go in there and save her. And yes, the Supreme Court has said, well, they don't have the duty to protect any one individual.
They have a duty to protect society, however.
They have a duty to protect society. So do you think, Tim, in this instance, this is one of those times where we might look at a judge saying, you acted so negligently in this case that your qualified immunity doesn't hold?
I do. And am I saying that that's a done deal? No. But wow. Yeah. I mean, I guess the term that you always hear in the law, we use it for punitive damages. I've used it to get a verdict overturned once very successfully. And the term we see is, does it shock the conscience? Right? Does what these officers do or what these officers failed to do shock the conscience? I think it did. I think it's shocking. I think it's like, what in the heck is going on over there, guys? So, and at that point, I think, was there a known right or a right that should have been known that they weren't protecting? Yeah, this woman's life. That's pretty much the ultimate right there, the right to live, pursuit of happiness and all that stuff. Well, life has to come first. So I guess I do feel like this shocked me, and I think I've got a fairly difficult to shock conscience, and I think that if I was a judge on this, I would say we've pierced that veil. I would say this lawsuit proceeds.
So remember, I mean,
that's me.
That qualified immunity is
subject to judicial interpretation.
Subject to interpretation.
Right.
Subject to, it is a presumption.
Correct.
But it can be overcome.
Absolutely.
And if the plaintiff in a civil suit says, no, these officers acted terribly negligently, and we believe they should be personally accountable for it because here's the standards. We have evidence that the standards they were trained to, they did not hold to.
And politics and the error at the time has a lot to do with it. I mean, we've seen Uvalde, we've seen Parkland. I mean, Rodney King, we've seen what happened with Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis. I mean, the veil was pierced in all those cases, and that's because it shocked the public conscience.
Well,
so,
and I think Uvalde shocked the public conscience.
It shocked me. I think that's the worst one.
That's the worst one.
400 police officers, 20 of whom were in the hallway, listening to shots for 75 minutes, and nobody went in.
Yeah.
I still cannot believe that. All the cops I know, all the cops I associate with as a reserve officer with the Arizona Rangers, I just can't imagine that and how that all came to be.
If you go read the FBI report that came out about that, it is scathing on a level that I mean.
Normally, law enforcement doesn't criticize their own like that.
Yeah, but whoa,
and it should have been. And it should have been.
So listen, big thing out of this, recognize if an officer, their qualified immunity is just a presumption. It's a presumption in court, in civil court, and can be overcome, can be rebutted. And in this case, I think it should be. And I think these guys, now, that doesn't mean that the state won't have liability because They hired those jokers.
Right.
And they put those jokers out on the street.
Well, to me, this would be where you'd be talking about training a lot. The Discovery would focus on training here. What were you trained to do? You know, and of course, the doctrine has changed in law enforcement since Columbine. I mean, it used to be secure the scene, wait for SWAT. And now, if you've got an active shooter who's injuring innocent people, you go in. We saw this in Nashville with two brave officers who did exactly that.
Incredible work.
And shut it down. And I mean, and the public doesn't seem to give them the credit, the lauds that they should, because, wow, that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
But when you see ones like this, it's like, did you guys get the memo on that? I mean, you don't stand there and listen to people be murdered. You can't do that.
Yeah, and listen, I don't want to cast aspersions on anybody's character, okay? So I'm not telling you that these officers are terrible humans.
No. Maybe we saw them at their lowest. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe we saw them on their worst day. I do think that anybody in that situation that then reviews that incident and probably should go find another job.
Yeah.
You know, we say this, and I say it as a private citizen, right? Some people are made to be 911, and some people are made to call 911, and it's no shade in saying, nope, not my job, not what I'm gonna do. I don't have the courage for that. I don't have the high responder for that. I don't have, you know, because at times we need officer friendly for sure, but officer friendly also needs to be a meat eating crime fighter.
It ain't for everybody. And what job is? I mean, if you're really bad with the public, you don't like meeting people, you have a short tolerance, you have a low temper volume, you don't want to work at McDonald's. You know, you're going to want to jack in some jerk that comes in. Anybody that's ever worked retail can teach me about this. Good Lord, I don't know how you do it. If that's not for you, then don't do it. But if you can't accept the inherent responsibilities of being a peace officer, then you shouldn't be a peace officer. Yeah. And again, like John said, that's not bad on you. I mean, I have a lot of dear friends who don't understand the concept of leading an armed lifestyle. God bless you. That's fine. Be a sheep. That's totally cool. That's your right. I get it. But then don't pretend like you're a sheepdog.
Yeah, and it's the truth. So this is one of those cases where I think we should better understand qualified immunity, and this is one where I think that it should be nullified. It should be removed. And I think it should be a clarion call to everybody who's in law enforcement to look at themselves and go, okay, I put myself in that situation, and if I go, man, I don't think I could open that door and go into that house, time for a new job. Simple as that.
Yeah.